Wyman, Quinn Mann, and online we have Frank Kochman, and we're waiting for one other person who we believe is coming but is not here yet. And also with us is Marla Keene, who's the Development Review Planner, and Betsy Brown, who's the Planning and Zoning Administrative Assistant or Assistant. So thank you all for coming. There's a couple of ways to participate in this meeting, one of which is to attend in person, as some of you are doing. Another way is to attend online virtually. And if you do that, we ask that you sign in with your contact information in the chat room. And you can also attend by phone. And did we just lose our connectivity? No. Okay. Okay.
Didn't appear to work.
We ask that if you are attending virtually, please make sure your microphone and camera are off until you are asked to speak and are acknowledged to speak. And if you wish to participate during public comment, turn your camera on and raise your hand, and we'll call upon you during the public comment section. And we ask that you refrain from talking in the chat room other than providing your contact information, because it's not part of the public record. And for those of you in attendance in person, we ask that you sign in on the sign-in sheet out back, so we have a record of your participation in case you want to be a party to any action in the future. And if you're attending virtually, please send your contact information to Marla at mkeene@sbvt.gov. Pardon me. Or in the chat box. If you're on a phone, you can just email Marla and give her your contact information. Okay, evacuation procedures. There are 2 sets of doors in the back corner of the room. In the event of an emergency, simply go out those doors and turn either left or right, and you'll be outside, either on the street, Market Street, or in the parking lot. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items tonight?
There are not.
Okay. Announcements and reminders. So we will not be meeting again in August because it's our annual recess. Our next meeting will be September 7th. So because there are 5 Tuesdays in August, it'll be a few weeks before we see you all again in September. Any other announcements? No. Okay. This meeting is being recorded, and I think I've covered all that. So let's move on to agenda item number 4. Are there any questions or comments from the public that are not specifically related to an agenda item? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to our first project for review. And that is continued site plan application SB 22020 of Negley and Chase Construction to construct a single-story, 21,790 square foot office building, create 2,160 square feet of outdoor storage, and associated site improvements at 39 Bowden Street. The applicant has requested a continuation of this hearing until October 7th. So I guess we need a motion to continue that hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Quinn. Any discussion? All those in favor of continuing SP 22020 until October 7th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, good. Okay, item number 6 on the agenda. Let me read you a description. Sketch plan application SD 2211 of Gary Bourne to create a general plan unit development consisting of consolidating 3 existing lots into 1 lot, removing 3 existing buildings, and fully redeveloping the resulting 1.39 acre lot with a 3,500 square foot financial institution a 2,500 multi-tenant commercial building and a 3-story, 27-unit multifamily building at 760 Shelburne Road. I would have to say I'm glad about this proposal. Last winter, on a very cold and snowy day after snowshoeing, a friend of mine and I went to Kodos to have sake to warm up, and we looked out, and that we had had a significant snowfall, and there were these teenage boys who were walking up Pizza Hut with their snowboards, and they were snowboarding off the highest peak on the roof into the parking lot. And I thought, oh my God, that building's got to go. So this is a sketch plan, and that is a very high-level overview of the project so that we can address issues that the applicant will need to think of in subsequent hearings or presentations to the board. So let me ask, who's here for the applicant? Okay. And I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and I will swear you in.
No swearing at sketch.
Thank you, that's absolutely right.
I just like to say it that way.
Yeah, no swearing at sketch. Okay, let that be a reminder. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Jennifer Desatel. I am a senior project manager and licensed civil engineer with Trudell Consulting Engineers, also known as TCE.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And I'm Gary Bourne. I'm the owner of the project.
Okay, thank you. And someone else up back?
My name's Greg Rabideau. I'm here in case I'm needed.
Okay. And what is your role?
I'm the project architect.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm Lucy Thayer. I am a landscape architect with Trudell Consulting Engineers.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Okay.
So I wanted to start with public noticing. So it's come to staff's attention that there was potentially a defect in the public noticing. And what typically happens when there's defect in the public noticing is state statute has a specific statement about defects in public noticing. And then we leave it up to the board to determine whether to proceed with the meeting as planned or whether to continue it out to another date to give the public an opportunity to participate. So do you want to pull up that state statute? I think it's just easier if people can see it.
And what was the defect, Marla?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you guys describe what happened?
So I will try to briefly describe what happened, but Trudell Consulting Engineers recently became involved with this project. It was initially with Lamoureux and Dickinson, another engineering firm. TCE recently merged with Lamoureux and Dickinson, and at that time, in May, early June, we became involved with the project. The sketch plan application and sketch plan itself was mostly done by the time it came through our office, and we submitted that application in mid-June. However, TCE, we weren't listed as the applicant on the project, so we weren't copied on the notification that should have gone out to the abutters, which we normally would take care of. So when we were made aware of that not happening, we sort of immediately jumped on it and started hand-delivering those abutter notifications.
So the abutter notifications for a sketch plan is a 7-day notice. How far in advance did those go out?
We believe it was done at 6 days. And then I just want to note quickly that the placard was properly placed at the site. So I think that always piques people's interest. So there was public notification in that way. And then additionally, there was an article in the other paper that listed specifically this hearing date. I know that's not an official notification, but it seems like there's some buzz around the redevelopment of this project. So I think that the abutters were made aware of this hearing.
So essentially, the state law says no defect shall invalidate the action where reasonable efforts are made to provide adequate posting and notice. What the board sometimes does is I guess there's 3 options. Proceed as planned, and if we get through everything and there's no outstanding things, conclude the meeting and we'll see them at preliminary. Option B, which is sort of in the middle, is do the meeting and then continue for the purposes only of taking public comment if people want to come at the next meeting, and they wouldn't have to present anything if we're done. And option C is just not talk to them at all tonight and have them come back at a future meeting date.
So am I correct in understanding that the only defect was you were 1 day short in notifying people, butters, with a letter?
That's correct.
That the paper, which is not a legal notification, but the,
7 day. The 7 day time period, does that means you have to put it in the mail within 7 days?
It needs to be to people within 7
You have to
days.
receive it within. And
Right, so that's why we always, when we tell people, we say, okay, your deadline is 10 days before, because it gives the mail 2 days to get out.
Right, okay.
and the placard had the
placard was there.
correct.
Yes, and I think we also, I think, all know that this is sketch, and there's 2 other hearings that are coming up in this process, and an Act 250 application that'll take place. So we sort of feel like we're really anxious to hear some feedback from the board. We've been getting and working with staff on answering some questions, but we really value the DRB's input, and we would love to get a little input tonight.
Of course.
Can I ask a staff question? Is our agenda for our first meeting in September already have other applications?
Yeah, it's pretty full. If we were to only take public comment, we could probably squeeze them in. But if
That's
we
what
were
I'm
to,
just, that's, I kind of like that, I believe you call that option B.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd make, for purpose of discussion, I'll make a motion to have this discussion, sketch, continue it to our first meeting in the, September, in case people want to give public testimony. So,
Do we have a second on that motion? I'll second it. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we'll go ahead as planned tonight, and then we'll have public comment in September.
Don, can I just add that there will be an opportunity for public comment tonight as well, correct?
Sure, of course.
Okay.
Of course, yes. So we are going to allocate an hour to this discussion. Maybe it won't take that long, but what we typically do during this time is go through the staff report and focus on the issues that the staff has highlighted and have you respond to those. So you get a sense from the board of what our thoughts are about the staff comments. So let me open this.
Will we have the opportunity to just give a little background on the project before we jump into the
I'm just
staff
trying to
notes?
find it, and I was just going to say, if you could give us some introductory comments, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. So, I think you have your packet describing some of this information, but I'll give a brief overview. We are here tonight to talk about the project located at the southeast corner of Shelburne Road and Swift Street. And currently, the site is 3 separate smaller parcels. And they're currently occupied by a gas station and the associated gas pumps and canopy, the Bourne Service Center and some office space, and then, as you mentioned, the old Pizza Hut building, which is now abandoned. Right now, there are 4 total access points for these 3 parcels and uses. There are 2 access points on Shelburne Road, 1 curb cut for Pizza Hut, 1 curb cut on Shelburne Road for the gas station. There are 2 on Swift Street, 1 curb cut for the gas station and 1 curb cut for Bourne Service Center. So we'll get into the proposed conditions, but just to let you know what's out there now is a total of 4. The total area of the parcel is 1.43 acres. The project is located within the Commercial 1 R15 zoning district, which encourages higher intensity residential, retail, and office space, mixed uses that serve or enhance a compact central business area. So we feel that the proposed project meets the intent of those zoning regulations as a whole. The proposed project, we're here tonight to talk about the project being developed as a planned unit development and consolidation of the 3 individual parcels into 1 parcel that's the 1.43 acres. There will be 3 new buildings constructed on the single lot with the related site and utility improvements and associated amenities. The first building is just over 3,000 square feet and is proposed as a financial institution, a bank, at the corner of Shelburne Road and Swift Street. And there's currently a standalone ATM proposed at the southeast corner of the overall parcel. We would like to talk further about the ATM location, but that's where it's currently proposed. The second building is just south of the corner. That's a multi-tenant, 2,500 square foot building proposed just south of the bank on Shelburne Road. That use will likely be retail or office space. The third building is a 3-story multifamily residential building on the eastern side of the overall parcel. That's currently proposed to include 27 residential units. And that building is roughly 60 feet by 160 feet. So there it is. The architectural designs for the 3 buildings are in the early stages. The architect is here tonight for 2 of the buildings, and we'll continue to work on that throughout the process, and we're happy to share additional information as it becomes available. There's some limited architectural details included in the package, but obviously there's more work to be done. The proposed access points. So we are proposing to get rid of 2 of the 4 curb cuts. So there will be 1 access point on Shelburne Road near the southern boundary and 1 access point on Swift Street. So that's the reduction of 4 curb cuts just down to 2 curb cuts. The density, there's 27 units proposed. We've described in the narrative how we get to 27, which is the 20 base units, and then some additional offset units for the inclusionary units and some density bonus in there. The calculations are outlined. I won't go through describing those in words, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Waivers. We are requesting a front setback waiver. The required setback is 20 feet and the proposed setback is 10 feet. This is actually, you can see a little bit in the overlay that the canopy of the existing gas station sticks out much further than the proposed bank would stick out into near Shelburne Road. So we're pulling it back quite a bit, and we feel this is consistent with some other development in the area and helps us provide that strong building presence along our frontage on Shelburne Road. We are also requesting a waiver from the master plan requirement. Since it's a fairly small parcel and the landowner does intend to develop it within the 3-year time frame, we are not proposing a master plan at this time and requesting a waiver for that requirement. There are 69 parking spaces proposed, 45 surface spaces, and 24 spaces underneath the multifamily building. Bike parking, we are proposing both short and long-term spaces, and we will meet the current regulations with that requirement. Site amenities, we're proposing both the requirement for the non-residential and the residential spaces, which is outlined in green there. Thank you for pulling that up. So it's a total of 2,000 square feet, roughly. Traffic and pedestrian connectivity. The existing PM peak hour trips for this project.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're getting to a lot of stuff that's in the staff report.
Sure.
Do you want to skip things that we're going to cover later anyway?
These are just my last couple of sentences. I'm trying to be brief. Trying to go the highlights. So the existing PM peak hours, 135 trips. We're reducing that down to 82 trips with this development. So I will give a quick overview of the things we're improving. We feel like this project is obviously much more aesthetically pleasing than what's there, as you had mentioned in the beginning of this discussion. We're proposing to improve pedestrian connectivity with a sidewalk that extends from the southern boundary all the way up to Swift Street. We're proposing to reduce the curb cuts, as I mentioned, and provide stormwater treatment. Right now, there's no stormwater treatment for any of these parcels as it stands currently. We're proposing to actually reduce the impervious area of the overall parcels and provide some, obviously, improvements with landscaping and other features. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have related to the staff notes.
So remind me, a financial institution, an apartment building, and then kind of a mixed-use retail.
Retail or office
So
space.
no more Bourne service station?
Correct.
Really?
No service center.
Okay, that won't go elsewhere?
No, my brother Rainey has retired.
Okay, all right. That's a loss.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
But good for him.
Okay, let's start with the staff comments. Number one is regarding, you've already answered, you are requesting a waiver requirement for the master plan. So thank you for,
Yeah, so let's talk about what that means. So the board, okay, I guess this one is more straightforward than I was remembering. The board may waive this requirement for a PUD of less than 4 acres to be developed in a single phase of no more than 3 years. The advantage of a master plan is that you get vested in the regulations that are in place at the time, and then you can phase the construction of the buildings. A master plan can only be for 10 years, but we just wanted to make sure that, you know, none of those things were tempting enough to go for a master plan because it does have some real advantages as well.
In our current situation, this has already been delayed repeatedly, so we don't, our desire is to move on this and move expeditiously. Now, if we find out that there's some unknown sourcing of materials, but I think for what we're proposing here with regard to the apartment structure, the other two structures, I don't see any issues. We don't see on our end why this can't move forward.
okay, thank you. All right, number two,
I have a question,
go ahead, Frank.
Mr. Bourne. How many owners do you propose? Are you going to be a lessor of all these buildings, or are you going to sell the buildings to someone else or several other someone else's?
Right this moment, our intent is to hold the entire structure, all the properties. And that's been a long-term way that my wife and I have operated. We did last year, in fact, sell our first property, but it was one that didn't fit anything we were doing. But it's been our habit to buy and hold all these years. And the development of this current plan fits our desires with the ground lease to the financial institution and the other two buildings. We currently have a number of rentals in the Stowe and Morsel area, so this is not out of character with what we do currently.
Do you have a financial institution lined up who wants to be a lessee?
We do.
Okay. And who's that, may we ask?
It's Chase Bank. And they've been in direct contact with the board, with the professional staff here in South Burlington.
Thank you. That was my question.
Any other questions from board members?
Well, just on the master plan.
Pardon me?
Just on the master plan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and then, Marla, the draft amendments for the TDRs that are noticed for August 8th at the Planning Commission, would that allow, if they were to be approved as written or drafted right now, would that allow even more density than the 27?
It could potentially, yes.
Okay.
Let's see, the base parcel has a base density of 21 units. You can get up to an additional 50%, no matter how you slice it, either with TDRs or with inclusionary. Often, and you may be able to speak to this better, but 3 floors is sort of like a hard cutoff, and then to go beyond 3 floors, you need a lot more units to make it financially viable. I don't know if that would.
I found that to be the case with a couple of these mixed-use buildings, is that, you know, you're sort of crossing over a threshold into much more expensive construction when you go beyond 3. And right now, we're at 27, and I think that maximum 50% above would be only 30.
Right, so it wouldn't get you a lot more to.
Right. We're at 3 more units than we're proposing now, so we're nearly at the maximum.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Let's move on to number 2. This is about how the development will fit into the character of the area as it exists. How you develop the project to take the character of the area into consideration.
And this is really about the planned character of the area, right? So the context analysis, this is a totally new set of standards in this regulation. The board hasn't seen it before, so please be a little bit patient with us. But it's, if development hasn't taken place under the current regulations, then we're looking at the current regulations and what that planned character would be. So in this case, it's the urban design overlay because this area hasn't been redeveloped in a while.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we understand that it's a new requirement, and it's new to us too. So that was a little bit tricky because, character of the area, the project that we're proposing doesn't exactly match what's going on existing, but what we're proposing is in line with what the intent of the regulations. So regarding those characteristics of what's required, we feel like this project supports and enables affordable housing, that much needed residential housing in the area. We're redeveloping sort of properties that need work, commercial strips and retrofits, contaminated sites. So we feel like the proposed project is in line with the redevelopment of that type of project. We're incorporating the density to provide as much residential units as makes sense for the site, and improving the physical appearance, walkability, access to. The great part about where these residential units are going is it does provide that buffer from heavy commercial on Shelburne Road to some of the more residential areas on the east side of Shelburne Road. That transitions to an area that has, public open space and public parks nearby that are accessible, and public transportation. It's really a great spot to have kind of that higher density residential. So we feel that it fits. We did take a look at the comprehensive plan, and I can get into how it matches there, but I really feel like this does sort of fit within the intent of those requirements.
Any questions or comments about that?
I know this is not city center, but this reminds me of the debate about the unnamed pharmacy at the start of our city center. This is it may not seem like it now as a high profile parcel, but if you think about it, it kind of is, because it's there at a major intersection. And so it'd be nice if, I realize banks are not the institutions they once were, where the bank building was the dominant structure and it was made of brick in beautiful Flemish architecture like downtown Burlington from the turn of the century. But that being said, it would be nice if any of those buildings there could have a little pizzazz. It's and I get it. There's sort of a construction modality that's going on now that we'll break it up with different color panels and structures. But at the same time, this is a rather high profile. I don't know, just as a resident of the Shelburne Road corridor, the oft ignored Shelburne Road corridor, which is, our city council has said, is supposed to take most of the growth along with the Williston Road. It would be nice to, it's not required, but it'd be nice to dress up the buildings. This is the same thing we talk about with, whether it's the auto dealers or others, like, hey, can you make that look a little nicer? So that's just, that's my feedback at Sketch. Like, this is a high profile parcel, and,
Well, we share the board's concern on that, and some of the projects we've done in other places, whether we've done a few projects in downtown Morrisville, historic renovations on the main streets, and then even the service station downtown, trying to make as nice a service station as you can with a period facade. And we've got several sites on Cape Cod where they're in extremely high visible locations, and we followed that same design thing. So this isn't a hit and run. We build these things and own them, and we take some pride in how they look.
I know, I get that.
So, we want very much what the board wants, and we tried to shape this project with that in mind. How can we make this nice looking?
Is there any way, I'm thinking of, if you look, farther north, we've got, I think it's the Deemer building, one of the lighting building. It's the Deemer with the clock tower, and it's got some brick elements.
Yes.
Lights building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, it's still modern, but at least it's got some of the brick to tie in. Can't remember what's going to be actually built at the old Kegel Sitco, but I start marching down the corridor there. And
That was one of Greg's projects as well, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I don't know. I'm not trying to get you guys to redesign, and I realize there might be a cost element, but boy, it is a prime parcel, and
We certainly appreciate those comments, and just to put your mind at ease a little bit, we have been meeting with Chase Bank on a regular basis, and I think Gary's been meeting with them on a kind of a long-term basis, and they're actually listening in, I think, to this conversation. So they're hearing what you're saying. And
I'm sure they've got something in their wallet.
Oh.
Wait,
Any other comments or
Yeah, and if
questions?
the board wants to delve into the architecture, Greg is here, and Greg was at least your firm did the 510 Shelburne Road building as well, right?
Yeah,
In which building is that?
The Kegel
yeah, I'd like to,
next to the K,
The Brian
lighting store
Cairns.
and the
Oh, okay. All right, that one. Okay, got it.
tower.
It
Got
hasn't,
it. Okay.
it's starting
excuse
construction as soon as
me,
they get their state permit.
Dawn,
We don't have to belabor it, but I'm just saying that that's my feedback. But
Uh,
defer to the other board members.
Excuse me, Frank has a question.
yeah,
Go ahead, Frank.
reaffirm the spirit of what Dan
Frank,
is saying.
you're breaking up,
With a
Frank.
metropolitan tone. This is not, they have, let me try it like this. How's that? Can you hear me any better?
Yes,
Yes.
that's good, thanks.
Okay, let's try that. I wouldn't, tiptoe up to the issue, Dan. I would say forthrightly that these folks are proposing to have as a presumably long-term lessee, a major bank. It's not exactly a startup. You should not be shy in letting the bank know, and if they're listening, I'll let them know, at least for me, that we expect a beautiful building at that very important intersection of the city of South Burlington. That's my comment.
Thanks, Frank. Any other comments from the board?
I did have one question about the building just to the south. The bank's supposed to be at the corner, right?
Yes.
And then just south of it would be a separate retail. Is the desire of that just to have a cleaner lease with rather than having one building with a bank and most of it, and then empty space to be determined? Are you just trying to make it cleaner because the bank only wants a certain amount of space?
Yeah, I'm sure this whole thing, it's been quite a long time in process trying to
Yeah.
put this together.
Yeah.
And this is, I didn't have any desire. We've never built a bank.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of things, but never a bank. And when there was a chance to do a ground lease
Yeah,
and
I get it.
incorporate with the other properties, that was attractive to us. We had tried to develop at different junctures the Pizza Hut, or to make it viable with what we already did. That wasn't permitted or wasn't feasible. So this gave us a chance to exit that, and then with my brother's retirement, to continue to move forward and do the whole project at once, which is a lot more efficient. But again, this was started some years ago between permitting and then COVID.
Yeah.
And then we've been in discussions with the board for over a year, the professional staff for over a year. So this is,
Gotcha.
so it's
Okay.
kind of backed into this, but our desire is to do the whole thing, but it's a separate building, separate business.
Gotcha. Okay.
It also allows us to put some nice green open space in the middle between those two buildings.
So I'm not sure we need to hear from your architect at this point, because we'll be hearing a lot more down the road.
Right.
So we'll look forward to seeing that pizzazz, as Dan so called it. Thank you.
We like pizzazz.
Yeah. pizzazz. Okay, comment number 3. I'm not sure I understand this comment, so I'm going to read it and then maybe ask for help from Marla. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe how, in response to the planned development context in the planning area, the required modification better achieves the general PUD objective above.
Wow, yeah, I'm reading this and I think we missed the salient. Oh, here, it's at the very beginning of the PUD section. The applicant has proposed one lot for all 3 buildings. The LDRs do not allow one lot with 3 principal buildings, or 2 principal buildings even, unless they're related. If you had, a warehouse and a manufacturing building that were related, they could be on the same lot. But if they're unrelated, they have to be on separate lots. The minimum, this is very convoluted, I apologize. The minimum lot size in this zoning district is 3 acres. They only have 1.43. So in order to subdivide this 1.43 acre lot into 3 parcels, in order to get 3 buildings, they need a waiver of the dimensional standard for minimum lot size. So in order to get a waiver of minimum lot size, they need to be a planned unit development, which is how we get to this convoluted thing. And how planned unit developments are, there's much more in the regulations about what makes something a PUD. Specifically, the LDRs say that all PUDs are expected to adhere to higher standards of design than subdivisions or site plans. So then we talk about, what the standards are, and we're talking about how so this is, we're getting to staff comment number 3 here. How waiver of dimensional standards can be to accommodate reductions related to infill, allow for more creative and efficient subdivision, create better compliance with pattern and form of proposed development, and create better energy efficiency. So the question here, now that we're finally getting to it, is how is this waiver of the standard for 3-acre lots allow the project to better comply with the PUD standards?
So I think that it allows for that just because it makes for a much more cohesive project. I would really, as an engineer that dabbles in planning, I would really hate to be trying to develop these 3 parcels separately. And I think you've looked at doing pieces of that before. It provides for a much more cohesive project to be able to provide one curb cut in for instead of on each road instead of 2 on each road, things like that. It also helps us provide some cohesive open space and adequate area to treat stormwater runoff, which is also a concern when you have these disjointed, tiny parcels trying to get them to work together. So
I think that this has been to get to the PUD, from my perspective as a layman, it's been a trip through the rose bushes. And from last year when we first met with you folks, or the most recent period of time when we met with the professional staff to get to where we are today. The fact is the PUD enables me to give up the curb cuts and give up high use, high traffic restaurant, the gas station, and step back from that and say, okay, we can go to a bank, which we know the trip ends are very modest, and we can get a high quality tenant that will give us the kind of structure that we all wish to see. We can do a commercial building on a good location, but still only have one egress point out on Shelburne Road, which we've been there for 40-something years. We know the traffic on Shelburne Road, it can actually be anti-business because it's so jammed up. So by giving up this other and putting it all together, then when we turn to the people and say we have to have storm water, we're in a site where we know the soil characteristics because we've repeatedly put tanks in the ground. We know that there's going to be some hard sledding to get the engineers to say, yes, this stormwater will work. We can prove it. It's great. But to do that, we need some room to work. We might get away with doing it for one of the buildings, perhaps the Pizza Hut, but I don't know what you do with the current Howard Center where the apartment building would go, or the service station because of the size of it and the setback requirements. By looking at the layout that we've proposed, and there's some flex to it, we've been able to put large areas where stormwater can be put and on a drive-by, and I've driven by it a lot in recent weeks, to look at that and look at the prints and say, how is this going to appeal to the people going 40 miles an hour down Shelburne Road? When they look over, there's room, the way this is spaced, for them to really see what we're trying to achieve in terms of green space. If we chop this back up and back up to the bad old days, then we need those curb cuts. We have to keep them. And we can't meet, because the station went into business in 1950. The rules were much different.
Sure.
In the 1970s, I sat in with South Burlington to learn how to write zoning and how to make it fit. Even then, it's a far cry from what we have today. But these businesses preempt that. We're trying to evolve the site under the guidance of the professional staff. A PUD, it's a rose bush. There's some thorns in there, some good looking stuff. You need to work with us, or I ask you to work with us to allow us to put it together as one project to try to get as much as we can.
Thank you. Go ahead, Frank.
I wanted to say that this is a circumstance in which the dancing through the requirements of the PUD, in this particular case, produces a somewhat absurd result. For this concept, a single lot makes a lot of sense. You're treating it as a single lot makes a lot of sense. I think we should convey to the developer that we'll consent to any readjustment of the lot sizes that are necessary to make the project flow smoothly, and that should be that, and not mess around with that a lot. I think we should all recognize that this is really a one lot development, and we're just trying to cross the Ts and dot the Is.
Thank you, Frank. Any other comments?
Can I just note, and I appreciate Frank cutting to the chase, as he often does. The alternative we were thinking as staff was that it could potentially, I suppose, not be this kind of project at all. If there weren't a dimensional standard waiver, it would have to be one lot with one building. But I don't think that diminishes anything anyone has said, but it's more like that was the alternative that we were viewing as we wrote this, rather than, I don't know, three buildings that were related uses or something.
Okay. All right, let's move on to comment number 4. This is, I'm not sure I have a handle on this, but it's regarding inclusionary units and TDRs. Marla, if you could paraphrase that question, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think Jen kind of spoke to this already, is that there's two ways, well, there's one way to get density above what's allowed in the district right now, and that is through inclusionary housing. And it sounds like they are hoping to take advantage of the ability to use TDRs as well if that regulation is approved next week by the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
I'm not sure that we need TDRs for what we're proposing. Well, we outlined it in the narrative that we submitted, but I will flip to that. And since we're at Sketch, we have the opportunity to go talk as a team to make sure that we don't find a way to up the density. But I think where we are right now is that we could meet that requirement based on the inclusionary zoning regulations.
You certainly can. Is that your intention?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So there will be
I think it's 5, isn't it?
5 inclusionary units. So a couple additional than what we would be required to have anyway. It's sort of just an easy way to get there, and Gary was willing to do that. So
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Let's move on. Okay. 4. Number 5. My computer is not cooperating. There we go. This is required civic space or site amenities. The question is about you've only provided for approximately 2,120 square feet of civic space or site amenities. And I guess more are required. Marla, is that your intent?
Yeah, they had reached out to me. I think there was an error in our math. What was the number that you guys had come up with?
we came up with 2,121 square feet of total site amenity space. Yeah, I think we cleared this one up via email we provided you with how we calculated that. And I think that we came to an agreement that the number that we had was correct.
Any further development in what you're planning on doing for those civic spaces at this point?
We have been working on some tweaks to the site plan, and once we get that all settled, which we would like to talk with the board about if we have a minute at the end, then we will kind of nail down what we're proposing for those open spaces.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to number 6. This is required standing conformity to the planned character of the area. We kind of touched on that before, but how to meet the standards for the new regulations regarding PUDs.
So we provided in our narrative that we submitted some information about this, but we can discuss it further. We can provide some additional information if that's helpful, if you feel like we need to discuss this further.
Yeah, so I didn't put it in red, but the 5 bullet points ahead of that comment kind of say what the standard is and then say whether it appears that your proposal meets it. So buildings must have a street-facing principal entrance with a direct connection to the street. It looks like the corner building meets that, but the other buildings do not. And then it goes on from there.
Right.
Should we talk about the ancillary building? Did we put the entrance on the side? Because we thought,
Right. In the alternative layout.
no, this is,
Go ahead.
on the secondary building, the retail building that would be south of the bank building. We had positioned it to put the entrance facing south,
All right.
just from a business perspective, because the traffic's coming from the south.
Right.
So they would see the entrance to that particular business versus having it on the very, very front. And I think that's the set or the drawing that we may have presented to you. Is that?
Right. So we do intend to meet those requirements as outlined in the regulations. So there will be some changes in order to meet these 5 bullet points.
Okay, does that work for folks? Thank you. Number 7, this is regarding the connections to adjacent lots.
So connection. So we are proposing pedestrian connectivity. It may shift slightly from the site plan that we submitted with our application back in June. But right now we are proposing connectivity to that southern boundary at Codo, all the way to the north to connect to Swift Street. Look at the site plan, that might be helpful. Thanks, sorry. But we are not proposing connectivity between the parking lots for vehicles. Primarily, this is because of there's going to be some significant, I would say, grading going on at this site in order to make this all work. There's a lower level underground for parking, and that really drops the grade in the back corner, which requires some retaining walls. And we just don't think that it's possible because of grade differences and retaining walls to provide that connectivity. And also the zoning regulations mention that you might provide that connectivity in order to reduce curb cuts. We're already proposing to reduce our curb cuts. I assume that the Codo restaurant doesn't want to give up their Shelburne Road access in order to cut through our lot to get to Swift Street only. So I think that we're providing the pedestrian access, and it sounds like it's not a hard requirement in zoning, and we would like to not provide that access between the different uses through our property.
So the board has some recent experience with this standard. 1302F includes the statement, all commercial lots located adjacent to other commercial lots must provide a driveway connection to any adjacent commercial lots. And then as the board knows, it goes on to say that if the adjacent lot does not wish to provide a driveway connection, which we know there's a connection today to the Codo lot, then the board can allow an easement instead. But I would say that if-then statement does not apply here because the Codo connection already exists today.
Is that way out back?
It's sort of where the right-left arrow is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
And just to note, the Codo parking lot does connect both currently to Shelburne Road, and then around behind that building that's to our east,
Green Mountain Florist.
Green Mountain Florist, out to Swift Street. So they currently do have access to both Shelburne Road and Swift Street because of they have an upper parking lot there. So this would be providing a second access for them on Swift Street. I'm just not sure if directing traffic to that location for the Codo restaurant is necessary in this case, or a good idea.
The cut-through traffic at this location has been an ongoing problem for forever. Currently, Codo doesn't actually have access to Swift Street via these properties, giving them access to the rest of it all the way to Swift Street when they already have it behind Green Mountain Florist doesn't seem reasonable. We were happy to give pedestrian access, and given the likelihood of Codo's peak periods being different than the peak periods for what we're hoping for our tenants, if some of the Codo's customers continued, as I'm sure you saw last winter, using the Bourne's lots, as the Denny's people use the Bourne's lots, we don't see that as a real problem. But allowing more cut-through traffic, it kind of flies in the face. We've gone to great effort to cut the traffic count, get rid of a service station, get rid of the Pizza Hut, which when it was operating was successful, to cut the traffic down. And we feel we can deal with what cut-through traffic we will get from our own egress to encourage more cut-through traffic. It's kind of like, if we're going to do that, then we should back up and go to a Chick-fil-A or something. If we're going to have traffic, let's have traffic and make some money on it and make it work. But we're trying to go the other way because we think it's a better project.
Sure, I hear that. Questions?
Dawn?
Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is from Marla. I mean, well, let me preface it by saying, I think the developer, from a practical and use standpoint, I mean, this is not just commercial, it's got a very substantial residential element. The idea of commercial traffic, moving back and forth in front of the residential building is quite unappealing. The question then becomes, Marla, really only a legal question, which is, what is our authority to waive the requirement? Do we have it or not? That's it. That's what it comes down to for me.
Well, I can present all of the relevant pieces of the regulations for the board to make a determination. The board has made the determination of late that this access management requirement that requires driveway connections between commercial lots is not a dimensional standard, and dimensional standards are specifically what are within the waiver authority of the board. So I would leave it up to you guys. I think that there's more. So that's the technical answer. I'd be interested in hearing from other board members whether they believe this connection is important or not. Our position is not, staff's position is not that this should be a alternative superhighway. And I think that any connection should certainly be designed to be the sort of thing you really only want to go to when you are using both of these lots. We would never want it to be something that would encourage cut through. But a simple driveway connection when you are, going from the bank to Kodo to, the next property south is what the regulations contemplate. And I think we've seen it be successful in other portions of the city.
Okay.
My thoughts were exactly what Marla said. So just to echo that, I think the regulation's pretty, not a lot of wiggle room there. And it doesn't sound like it's something we have the authority to waive. And it says in the regulation that it's not meant to be a cut-through location to encourage traffic in that way. So the intent would be for those connections to be designed in such a way that it only encourages connection for users between lots and is designed in such a way that doesn't encourage connection for alternative traffic routes.
Right. I think in this case, it's just tricky. I think it's not so much even that, well, one aspect is that the landowner doesn't want to provide this connection for safety and cut-through reasons, but also just from a pure engineering math standpoint, that grade on the eastern side of the site of the Kodos lot will be somewhere between 8 and 10 feet higher than the grade associated with the lower level of that building. So it just doesn't work from a grade point, slope standpoint, to have that connection to cut through between the properties. That would force any type of connection to be way down by Shelburne Road, right along the right-of-way, which would be pretty obvious cut-through options. So if you get backed up in traffic on Shelburne Road and you are going to cut through anyway, well, why not just do it sooner through the Kodos lot? It actually might be a disadvantage to the Kodos lot from that perspective. They would start getting additional cut-through traffic.
And I wonder if the regulation contemplates that the lot that we're discussing, the Kodos lot, is already connected to Swift, which is an unusual circumstance, admittedly, but the fact of it is already connected up through, and they don't currently have access across.
I would argue that the regulation isn't to create an access point to get them over to Swift Street, that the regulation is designed to keep them to be able to access the adjacent property without having to go onto a main road.
And a pedestrian access and allowing them to park on our side to go to their side, and vice versa. Somebody from Koto decides after they have dinner they want to go to the ATM, they can walk. That doesn't meet the intent or the goodwill of the law.
Does it say vehicular access? Or
It
does-
says driveway, so I'll just reread just because it seems like there's not a lot of flexibility. So all commercial lots located adjacent to other commercial lots must provide a driveway connection to any other adjacent commercial lot. So driveway is pretty clear that that's meant to be vehicles and not the pedestrian. Again, just
For what
just
it's
reading the
for what it's
regulation.
worth, I mean, it's a pretty clear statute, but the location of that driveway access could be in the southeast portion of the parcel and meet the standard. You could force people to drive through the ATM. And as somebody who on occasion of living 20 years along Shelburne Road has confessed on occasion did cut through the gas station to try to get over to Swift. I just don't see it happening now because it's not. I mean, first of all, somebody would have to make that conscious decision. Plus, with the gas station gone, the level of in and out traffic and hassle factor at that intersection's going to be much reduced.
Right. I think the problem for me is just the grade standpoint. The
I know,
elevation
and our
difference.
problem is that's what the planning commission wrote. So there's no waiver for
So-
undue impacts to residential buildings. So it's a weird anomaly. I get the principle of it. We're trying to get people to be able to. You know, if we had space, like out west, we'd have a frontage road and everybody'd be happy. We'd never get out of our car.
Right.
But, you know, we're not out there. So I get but the standard is the standard. So that's what's hard. We can't.
So I guess the temperature, it's sketch, and maybe I'm taking words out of your mouth, but it's sketch. The point is to take the temperature of the board. You're saying it's not feasible. The board has, in the past, not required connections between every commercial lot. When a commercial lot's bounded on three sides by other commercial lots, they've said, okay, that one's not really feasible because there's a wetland or because there's a dense stand of, really nice trees or because of grade issues. So I think that the board has found the room to not apply this standard to every single adjacent lot. What I would suggest is that the temperature of the board seems to be provide the connection. What you're saying is that it may not be feasible from an engineering perspective, and what I can offer is that I will lay out at the next stage of review all the applicable ways that this could be looked at. This is a PUD, so we'll talk about what waiver of authority is available and how that might apply or might not apply. So we'll kind of come at it from three angles.
Okay, great. And then also the connectivity of the Koto's lot to other commercial lots. Does that apply? Oh, because this is the end of the commercial district is the backside of this lot.
Well, so this is a requirement for this project.
Right.
One more comment, Dawn.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
If Dan's point about being able to do it in the extreme southeast corner, did you mean southeast, Dan?
That's what I meant, southeast. The standard doesn't say where this driveway access has to be located.
So in other words, let me put it this way. It's the tenor of the board is such that if this were driveway to be located in an extremely inconvenient and uninviting place, so long as it satisfied the letter of the regulation, it doesn't sound like anybody on the board would be terribly upset.
Yeah, and if the principle that the planning commission had put this in regulation was to encourage people to park once and then, or hop through or skip and a jump to the next parcel and do their banking or their whatever, then yeah, it doesn't have to say where it is. So you can merge it right into the ATM lane and nobody's the wiser. And then nobody's going to see it from Shelburne Road and go, I'll save 2 seconds by cutting through there. The moment they do it once, they'll go, I'm never going to do that again.
Well, and I think that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point. It's supposed to serve people for whom it is truly convenient and not for people who are,
In a hurry.
trying to save 2
Yeah,
seconds.
but if you had lunch or dinner there, you're like, okay, well, I don't have to go back out to Shelburne Road or vice versa, or something,
So, speaking of the ATM, the very last it's not in red, but the very last comment is about the location of the ATM.
I'm sorry, that should have been read.
Oh, okay. It therefore recommends the board review the traffic generation estimates at the preliminary plat stage of review. So I guess that's,
Oh, sorry, you kind of conflated two things. So the
Okay.
first one was about they're proposing an ATM. There's been a bunch of different ideas for the ATM, and if you wanted to invite the applicant to talk about some of the ideas, and then the second one was we'll review traffic at the next stage of
a
review.
little concerned about time, but if you can do it in less than 5 minutes, and I know you have some questions for us, so let's try to push ahead and,
Great. Do you mind, Betsy, pulling up the latest site plan that I sent Marla?
The one you sent today.
Yes, please.
Is it the rendering?
The rendering.
No, not the rendering. The
The
alternative
This-
layout.
It's an alternate sketch plan, yep. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, Lucy and I came into this project a little bit late, and that was our first question. Why is the ATM far away from the bank and tucked in this back low corner behind the residential building? So we have been kind of just back of the napkin sketching some alternative layouts, and this is one that we thought was fairly similar to the previous layout. Although it doesn't provide the cool access via the ATM. It is a layout alternative that we feel maybe, makes a little bit more sense from the standpoint of where the bank is located and where the ATM is located. We have
could you show me where that is? Where is the ATM?
Sure. See where the blue cars are?
Yes.
There's a little black box next to the first car closest on the Shelburne Road side. On the inside of that island is where the ATM would be located. So
Oh,
kind of
so
a
it-
sneaky little, one-way driveway to pull in and go to the ATM and pull back out.
Similar to New England Federal Credit Union.
Yes.
So you're gonna need to have the pretty lights like New England Federal has. Because, no, I mean, their lobby,
With the regulations.
I mean,
yes.
their lobby is an eye-catching feature. It captures a lot of light. It's nice to go into the bank there, it's flooded with light, it's,
Well, a
it works at that corner,
significant
it
is
dresses it
required.
up.
Right, and
you know.
we were concerned about safety in that
Yeah.
back corner. It's just a little bit awkward, and there was some conflicting uses of traffic between people trying to go into the residential units is sort of in the same lane as the ATM and the previous layout. So this is just something that is in the very early stages, but we wanted to pop up and get some initial feedback from the board to see if you had a strong opinion one way or the other.
I had a quick question. Is the apartment building okay where it is, or doesn't it have to be next to Shelburne Road? I'm not, Swift Street, sorry.
It depends on where the urban design overlay lands, but actually I just pulled up my notes on this because they had sent it to us very kindly a couple weeks ago. And the urban design overlay, hang on, goes back probably to where the driveway on Swift Street is, like just left of the driveway. So anything within that frontage would have to meet the urban design overlay standards, which means it has to have a direct pedestrian connection to the street and has to have 60% glazing along the first story. So this wouldn't necessarily work with that standard. And then the other thing that comes to mind is exactly what Gary was talking about with the cut through. Like this looks a heck of a lot more like a cut through to me than the other design.
I think Marla, on a previous iteration of the site plan that we sent you, there was just sort of an L-shaped in and out direct access, but this modified layout that we sent today does sort of have the same meandering kind of cut through option as what the original layout that was reviewed today has. So it's less of a concern, I think. And I think Gary is, really sick of cut through traffic. So he's more so than any other developer I've ever worked with, pro traffic calming. So we've been discussing what some options might be to further reduce any cut through in any of these layout alternatives.
And I like that this layout here gives us a lot larger green spaces to work with. And if you think about if you were out in Shelburne Road, even headed south or north, your ability to look through, I think it's going to pop in terms of the greenery and just the architecture for the buildings by pulling it back into the corner. And then the resident traffic, which admittedly is twice a day, it's not a high count. We understand that for residential, but they're going to access right out on Swift Street and further up the street from the intersection, which I think every foot you can get away from an intersection that's heavily used, the better off
I
we
would
are.
second that as somebody who went in and out of your brother's business. It was always like, you'd come in, you're like, I can't get in because it's all queued up.
And it's
Because
no
it's a no
guts, no
turn on
glory.
red and everybody's queued up. You can't get out of the Denny's. You can't go anywhere. You're stuck.
Yeah, and I think from the residential perspective, I think a lot of folks would wait and come through the light if you live there, go up and around and come straight into your parking space. And I like a lot of this setup. We hadn't thought of it before with the Lamoureux and Dickerson had come up with the first plan, which was very, very good. But this is more akin to what this type of apartment egress is something you'd see in some of the higher end urban centers like Toronto. You know, I told the staff this is the Toronto effect because the apartment building, there's no reason with Greg's help, it can't look great. And granted, it's only the folks standing in the Denny's parking lot that are going to see it, but they're going to see it. So,
Okay.
you know, the fact there isn't actually anybody on the other side of the road, the visual, but at least facing Shelburne Road where the high traffic count is, I think the view could be quite nice.
Okay, good. So, Frank, was that you?
Yes, I'll try to be pretty quick. I'm a little concerned about the point Marla raised in here somewhere about, you know, the having the principal entrance facing the street. How do we do that with a residential building? I mean, I'm assuming that that's facing Swift Street is really an underground garage entrance. Is that right, or am I wrong?
You are correct. So we would have to work to provide some type of doorway or walkway to that access point. And that would force that significant grade difference to be on that side where you're really diving down into that lower level of parking from Swift Street. It happens fairly abruptly.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, just forewarn you got a problem you got to solve there. With the,
Thank you for that comment.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, let's give you an opportunity to make the few comments you wanted to at the end, and then we're going to have to conclude this for the evening.
Testimony, if any.
Yes, thank you.
I think that you answered most of the questions that we had, and I really appreciate the initial feedback on that layout alternative.
Okay, so do you have any additional comments?
I don't.
Perfect. Okay,
You
thank
good?
you. Okay, good, thanks. So let's see if we have any members of the public who would like to comment. Are there any online, Betsy?
Keith Epstein had indicated in the chat that he would like to make a public comment, so I don't know if he is, I see him on here. Oh,
Okay.
okay, yep.
Hi, Keith.
Hello.
Tell us
thanks.
what's on your mind.
Yeah, so again, my name is Keith Epstein. I'm not an abutting neighbor, but I live in the general area. And I'm really happy to see this type of development. Like you said, that old Pizza Hut's been an eyesore for a long time, and this is going to bring some well-needed housing to the area. But I wanted to offer some suggestions to try to what I see as making some improvements to the project. I don't know that they necessarily help, that they make it meet any rules that it doesn't meet now, but just offer some general improvements. And one is actually regards to having a bank at that location. Just today, I counted the number of financial institutions from Swift Street down to Imperial Drive. And there's 6 banks and 3 credit unions for a total of 9. And one of the characteristics of a PUD is that it introduces missing or complementary uses, facilities, services, amenities that are intended to serve the immediate and surrounding area. And when I read that, I don't see a financial institution as introducing anything that's needed in the area. From my perception, things that would be more needed in the area would be things like a bicycle shop, childcare, a restaurant, physical therapy, dentist, things like that. And the more businesses of that type that can serve the local residents, the less parking you need, less congested it will be. So that's my first suggestion, is to reconsider the idea of having a financial institution there. Another would be to include some electric car charging for residents as well as visitors. And another would be to consider going over the minimum bike parking. I see there's only eight spots for bikes, and there are 69 for cars. That's a pretty low ratio considering e-bikes are becoming more popular, and South Burlington is gradually becoming less and less car dependent as we become better connected. So I encourage you to think about doubling or tripling the number of bike racks. You know, they're pretty inexpensive and they have a lot of value to the people who use them and to the community at large. Another would be to consider putting a roof over the bike racks, make them more inviting and encourage people to use them. A small one would be the south pedestrian connection. Consider having a ramp for wheelchair users and for bikes. There's a connection that's not too far away from there that's a sidewalk connection, and it's got a bump. So if you're on a wheelchair, you can't use it. You have to be right out by Shelburne Road, right by all the curb cuts. And the final one, if you do keep the bank, I ask you to consider eliminating the ATM. You know, as South Burlington becomes less car dependent, it's okay to park your car and get out and walk to an ATM that's in the bank. Or if you bike up, to put your bike on a bike rack and go into the bank. You know, when I go to the NEFCU, I don't use the drive-through, and it just seems like an extra expense. You know, it costs you more to pave. You've got more impermeable surface that you have to manage the stormwater, and less friendly to non-car usage. That's it. Just wanted to share some comments.
Thank you, Keith.
Welcome.
Any other members of the public who would like to comment? Okay.
I'd like to compliment Keith for his comprehensive comments. Those were awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I think that
excuse me, I don't seem to have, I can't get my camera to come on for some reason. I don't have video.
Is this Donna?
Layden? Yeah, this is Donna.
Did you want to provide public comment, Donna?
Yes.
Okay.
Just very briefly.
Sure. Go ahead.
I was looking at the two layouts, and the last one, just from a perspective of pedestrian bicycle access, just ease of access and ease of understanding the traffic flow on the site. I thought the second plan was much preferable, and it also provided a lot more green space. You know, I think the building was set back from the street a little bit more, and if you could solve the public entrance issue, which doesn't seem to be impossible to do, that one I think solved a lot of the issues of the previous layout. You know, whether or not you have the ATM drive up, which I happen to like driving up to an ATM on my bicycle, so because at least those that'll serve me. And also I think for people with handicaps who, you know, who have vehicles, it does make it a little bit easier for them. So I don't have a big problem with that. But yeah, just from the bicycle access, and just that this is going to be a pretty prominent corner, you know, very visible corner and everything. And I like the fact that there's a decent sized residential property there, and just to make sure that there's good access for pedestrians and bikes there, and good access to the bus, which should basically stop right in front of it.
Right.
You know, or there's a bus stop pretty close to that, I believe.
Thank you, Donna.
That's all.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who would like to comment?
I have one last question.
Yes.
There was something that we didn't talk about. The significant architectural element if the board or staff has any direction for us on what we should be looking at as an example, that would be helpful. I know that Chase Bank in particular has a specific architectural feature that involves their logo, symbol, that may qualify, but we weren't sure if there were some specific requirements for that.
Are you asking us to define pizzazz?
Yes, please. Besides the work that Greg's doing, of course, to make the buildings.
Our board architect is not here. Well, there was the comment that you had made about the corner element, or what was on the 5 bullet points. There was something in there about.
I mean, the regulations just say a significant architectural feature. It doesn't define what that is. We've seen, actually, you'll be seeing a couple hearings from now an application that does the inverse of what we've seen recently. Usually people go with something bigger on the corner. You know, the one farther down the shop. Anyway, there are a few that have done something kind of big and tall on the corner. We have an application that just is going to be hitting my desk this week that actually made it like a different, it was like all glass, and the rest of the building is actually taller and it's smaller, but because it's all glass, it kind of creates a significant architectural feature. So it's really up to you guys.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily need to be bigger to be significant.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. We will see you back here at some point.
Thanks.
Wait, so we're continuing them to September 7th for the purpose of taking public comment if there were any.
Do you need a
people who
motion
did
to that
not-
effect?
Nope, it's sketch.
Okay.
So we'll see you on September 7th. Feel free to attend remotely. If there's public comment, we'll take the public comment, and if not, we'll just open and close.
Great. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, can we have a 2-minute recess before we start this long next
Sure.
item?
Yes. We will, do we stop tape for a
No,
recess?
it's fine.
Okay.
We'll just mute ourselves, I guess.
we're going to resume this Development Review Board meeting for August 2nd, 2022.
Sorry, Betsy.
And we're going to pick up with agenda item number 7, which is a site plan application SP 22032 of UVM Medical Center to construct a 1.5-story, 84,006 square feet medical office and outpatient. Please, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's just jump right into the staff report and take these comments in sequence.
Just one other quick thing. We do have Corey Mack with Wall Consulting Group who is online. We don't anticipate that he'll speak tonight, but he is part of our team.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first comment is the need to, we need a mechanism for restructuring further growth times 10 years. I'm looking at my notes here. Let me, restricting the remaining lands from future growth for 10 years that would be represented by a master plan. Marla, help me out here. What does this mean?
So projects that have the potential for future growth are required to be reviewed as a master plan because this project is only developing the front 2/3 of the parcel.
Oh,
They would have to either have a master plan or, as discussed at sketch, somehow find a mechanism to indicate that they won't be pursuing future
Okay.
development. And the recommendation for 10 years is something that Paul had suggested because a master plan is only good for 10 years. So it doesn't make sense to restrict it any longer than if they had just gone ahead and done the master plan anyway.
so do you understand that?
We do. One thing that we want to say, though, is we consider this site 100% built out. As we had presented at sketch plan, we have really maxed out where we can put a building on the site. We have no intention, the medical center has no intention of doing anything on that back piece of land, of the northern parcel of the land, rather. And in addition, further comments in the staff report require a connection from Barn Road or Barn Lane in the Eastview development to come across that portion of the site, which is going to bisect it and not make it buildable or anything anyway. So we have no intention of doing anything on that back lot. I'm
So-
not sure we need to do anything more, but we just wanted to really make that pretty clear.
So you're good with the limitations of a
Yes,
site
we're
plan?
fine.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So, yeah, not quite what we're saying here, but I think Gail's other point about additional limitations may be what we're saying, right? Because what we're saying is it's not just their word, it's something that restricts it more than just
We
their
don't
word.
object to that. I mean, whatever language you come up with is.
Well, no, so we're saying you should come up with a language, but then Gail made the
Okay.
suggestion that perhaps these additional encumbrances will be enough. So let's revisit that and see
Sure.
where we land
Right.
with the additional encumbrances and whether that covers it.
Okay.
Frank has something?
Yeah, wait a minute, we could just make it with their consent, they would consent to a condition of the permit, shall not develop the remaining land for a minimum of 10 years. That's simple, yes?
Is that allowable? I guess if they consent to it, you can put anything you want in the decision. It doesn't have to be in the regulations, right?
You would just
Right.
probably
Okay.
have to make it clear that it allows for that future public road connection.
And we'll be talking more about that. Okay.
Okay.
Are you good, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of ways to get that accomplished, but that's a very straightforward way,
Okay, thanks.
I'm fine. Right?
Okay, number 2, we need a plan for paving, striping, and signage.
And yes, we are prepared to do that.
Okay,
And we'll make sure that all the pavement markings are
noted.
noted and ADA compliant.
Thanks. Board members, we're kind of moving through this quickly, but stop me if you have questions or comments. Okay, number 4, did we just do 3?
What page you on, Bill?
I'm on comment Well, we just did 2 and 3.
Well, I think 3 actually had to do with the proposed walkway that comes up along the entry drive and goes behind the proposed 4 ADA parking spaces to the main entrance. And we understand the concern and will move the sidewalk to the front side of those parking spaces so there's no conflicts.
Okay, good.
And we'll pull up a site plan as you're going through.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. If you could put up the updated one that we submitted today, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, that ADA, that didn't seem safe. Okay, Frank, we're on number 4.
Just keep in mind that as we're looking at this updated one, it may, you may have to highlight the differences between what it says in the staff report and what's on your revised one.
Sure.
Okay. How this comment is about how to create a street-facing presence and make it oriented to the street.
This is something that we discussed at Sketch Plan
Yes.
with you in great detail, and based on how the whole design of this building and this project is, and given the physical limitations of the site, the entrance really needs to be on the west side of the building. But we have a glass facade on both the west and the east, the west and the south side of the building to give the appearance of the entry. And
Do you have an elevation to show us of that?
there's a perspective sketch that was submitted as part of our site plan application. And again, I did submit that again today.
We're looking.
But what I can do is I can direct you to the right page in the packet, which
I believe it is perspective sketches. Let me see, what was it specifically called?
55. Yeah, page 55 and 56 of the packet.
got it.
So this is the view from the west, not from the street.
So that's the actual front.
So this is the actual front of the building, and again, it's got the canopy over the entrance. On the south side of the building is the main entrance for people going into the facility, and the entrance, the doorway on the north side of the building where you see a person coming out, that's for people leaving the clinic. So there's a separation of those two uses. And then this is a perspective view of the entry as you're coming in along the drive.
So that's the south elevation.
Yes, so you see the south elevation, which we have the glassed in area, and then the actual door is on the west side underneath the canopy.
So that area a little further back with the little canopy is not a door or an entrance.
That is the courtyard area for patients and visitors to use that you can get through from the walkway, as well as once you get into the building, you can come out to that area.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess the question is,
does this do it?
right, is the building oriented to the street?
Board members, what do you think?
Or I guess we wanted to go back to the actual language, right? Because it doesn't exactly say building oriented to the street. It says, maintain or establish a consistent orientation, building placement, orientation, period. Maintain or establish a consistent orientation to the street, and where a prevalent pattern exists, continue in the manner in which the site's existing building foundations relate to the site's topography and grade. So it doesn't necessarily say there has to be a door facing the street. It just says that there has to be an orientation to the street.
And the sidewalk that would be coming from Tilley Drive that will be going in front of these lovely vehicles that are parked here would connect to that front entry. So again, whether you're driving or coming up as a pedestrian, you would clearly see where the entrance is to the building and would have a street presence in that respect.
Board, what do you think? Does this do it?
I mean, to me, the southwest corner of the building with the patio and for practical purposes, everybody's heading east on Tilley Drive. Nobody's coming from the west unless they're coming from their other appointment at the medical industrial complex that is. In other
Something
words,
tells me that most people are probably going to be coming from the west.
right. So I think visually it draws them in that way, and it's not a blank facade. It's
Right.
like something's going on there. That
Yeah, it's
entrance is-
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's our goal, I should say the medical center's goal as well, is that they need this entrance to be visible from
Sure.
Tilley Drive so that people know where to go.
Frank, are you okay with this?
I'm fine with it, I agree.
Okay, thanks. Okay, moving on to number 5. This is completion of the pedestrian path. So I have to say, I'm totally confused, and I wonder if we could go to a map of this area. And I'm confused about what O'Brien is proposing, what we might be asking the medical center to do, and what this road on the city plan, I forget the term, official road or something? Official map. I'm confused about those. Could we look at something and Marla, could you walk us through what these various paths
Absolutely.
are?
Betsy, can you go to page 23 of the packet?
I was reading a public comment that we received 2 weeks ago in writing, and I'm realizing I really don't have a handle on this, and I think this is an important issue.
And just please flip it so that north is up, because north is always up.
And that's one of the reasons I was really confused.
I know. When I first said, "Wait a minute,"
Yeah.
I know.
Can we flip the,
Yep, working on it. Oh my. That is too many buttons. We need to get you a shortcut. All right.
Okay.
If you could zoom out to show more, please. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to draw on this.
Orient us to Tilley Drive, Heinsberg Road, and Old Farm Road, please.
Great. I'm going to start with yellow for the roads. Tilley Drive. Heinsberg Road is kind of
Off the picture, maybe?
Off the map.
Actually, it's on the, is it? Oh yeah, it's off the edge of the map.
Yep.
But just I'm sorry, so that last one was wrong. But it touches, this is the entrance, and then it kind of goes off the edge.
Okay.
And then Old Farm Road is where?
Right there.
Oh yeah, Old Farm Road is here.
where? There.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so then I'm going to change colors to, let's say, pink. And pink is going to be the map, the official map roadway that is planned to be on lot 2 here. And then
And so that goes from Tilley Drive to,
the O'Brien Eastview development.
okay.
And if you could, my annotations aren't going to stay, but can you scroll down a little bit? The other direction down.
Yeah.
So you can see the Eastview development at the top of the page now. Switching again to a different color for rec paths.
Can you put the colors back, please? Yeah.
It's going to take a minute.
But this is important. It's important for us to really have a handle on this for 2 large projects.
Sorry, guys. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so if I go back to a new color for the O'Brien Eastview rec path connection, they were talking about having a rec path connection. Oh, I think that was maybe where let me undo that one. I think the Barn Road, oh dear. The Barn Road rec path, or the Barn Road comes in here-ish, and I think this is one of the staff comments, is that like, we don't actually know exactly where it is, but fortunately they have the same engineer, so it should be pretty easy to get it shown on this plan. And then the O'Brien rec path connection is somewhere in this vicinity.
I'm
Gail,
sorry,
correct me
I'm
if my green lines are slightly off.
really confused. Where does Old Farm Road continue?
Old Farm Road continues.
So what do why are there two green lines and where do they come from?
So
And what's the purpose of them?
the Barn Road green line, I want to say it does something like this. And then it connects this way.
Okay.
And then this rec path line goes down to this industrial road, and along the industrial road, which, if I switch back to the pink, this industrial road will continue all the way out to Kimball Ave.
And so
everything that's off the page is proposed on the Eastview development.
So those two green lines just end, and is that
yes,
that part of the conversation about where? Can you do that for us? I mean, is that where this problem lies?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't call it a problem.
Challenge.
Discussion.
Where do you want the connection to run, Mark?
So the LDRs say that all roads need to run to the property line and all roads on the official map need to be provided. So I get this is kind of embedded in the staff comments, but if I switch to a different color green, I guess, because I'm doing the green stuff now, one comment is that there should be an easement to create this connection at such time as the pink road is made. And the second comment is that this rec path should be extended to Tilley Drive. So the first one that I drew, the curvy one, is the suggestion is an easement because there's not a pink line yet. And then the second line that I drew is actually make the connection.
In terms of the connection of Barn Road through that northern part of the site to the future official map road, we are working with O'Brien Brothers now on that connection and should be able to have that on a future plan as an easement for the city to be able to have that. In terms of the shared use path connection, again, we are talking with O'Brien Brothers about that connection as well, and I think the concern is just how and where that can work as shown on that eastern side of the lot.
So when you say shared use path, that's the one that would go down and meander along Old Farm Road?
No, this is the one that I believe O'Brien originally, as part of that Eastview development, was originally proposed it to come along that future official map road that would connect from Eastview over Lot 2 to Tilley Drive.
Am I the only one confused about this?
Let me try to just, the lines that Marla drew on are actually pretty good lines. So.
A pretty what?
They're good lines.
Okay.
All right. So the path that comes, I don't know what the term was, but the one to the left as I'm looking at it, for the easement, that's not a problem. We'll negotiate what our easement requirements are needed to facilitate that connectivity. I would say that does fairly well encumber the area that people might be concerned about future development. On the second point, we've had discussions with the O'Brien brothers about the path from the property down, Bryan property, down to Tilley Drive. And we're going to look at that and try to see how we can accommodate that and then have discussions with the O'Brien brothers about who's going to pay and how we're going to pay for it.
Okay.
So those are discussions that we have not had, except to introduce the topic to the O'Briens, and we've committed to working together to figure out how to do that. There are some, we believe that so weaving the path down just to the east of our stormwater gravel retention areas may be a challenge, but we're going to be looking at that engineering. So we have no problem in concept with what you're discussing here.
Okay.
We'd be able to come back at the next hearing and talk about that.
Okay. So
Hang on a minute. I have a question. When you say you're providing an easement, you mean across the pale green path on the left as we look at it, is that right?
That's what I understood, is the easement would be required to connect the westerly.
Well, there's an easement and then there is a path to be built. Who's going to build the path? Have you and O'Brien and Brothers made an agreement on that?
No, we haven't come to agreement on it, but we did, based on the last public hearing here, understood what their issues were. We've had conversation with them, and we committed to figure out how we can make that work. And we bring it back to this body to describe what we're talking about.
and you're both big projects, and
Recording
you're both
stopped.
being reviewed about the same time. So this is very important for us.
Yeah, we haven't got an agreement yet. We're evaluating.
Recording in progress.
We're evaluating that green vertical path that Marla put on there to see how we can do that, and we were committed to making it happen and working with the O'Briens to make it happen. So,
Thank you.
Marla, quick question. What's the required width of that path hypothetically squeezed in between the eastern edge and the stormwater treatment?
Rec path city standards is 10 feet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any questions about these rec paths and road connections and whatever?
Yeah, I'm not through with the cost question because let's being candid here, we know from our last meeting that O'Brien is adamantly resistant to paying for this. And my question to the current applicant is, will you pay for it? Yes, no.
Well, Frank, if I may just add, I think clarity, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marla, I believe O'Brien has offered to pay up to the property line. And
Yeah, but we're only talking about from the property line to where it intersects the pink.
Well, and I think that what Dave is saying is that it's none of our business who pays for it, right? As long as it gets on the plans, then give them the time they're asking to figure it out.
The question is who's obligated, on whose plan?
Well, this is the site that would have it, so it would be on this site.
we will
plan.
show it on the next site plan iteration once we've had an opportunity to review the engineering and figure out how to do it. We are committed to doing it. We have been proposed to work with O'Brien's. We've had discussions with them, and they're willing to talk with us and figure out how we can get it done. We're just not prepared now to talk about the detail of it.
all right. Are we ready to move on? Thank you.
So I think that kind of covered a couple staff comments.
Yes.
We might have to do a little improvisation
Yeah,
as
that's
we move
fine.
forward.
So number 6, this is regarding the roof meeting solar-ready zone standards.
The roof of the building will be solar ready, but just wanted to let the board know that the medical center cannot add additional solar per state statute right now on the building because they've already maxed out under state requirements.
They're CON?
No, under state statute.
No,
they're-
there's a certificate of public good limitation for net metering.
Okay.
And I believe it's 500 kilowatt hours per individual entity, the UVM Medical Center being one entity, even though we have 50 sites or whatever. So we've already used up our allocation. We have solar fields in 3 locations now, probably well over 1,000 kW. And so we're not able to add any more. And that's the way the current statute is written.
Okay. Okay, good.
But we will make the roof solar ready, so when that statute changed, we'll get solar panels.
You're
up
ready.
there. Yeah.
We're ready.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I'll write that into the decision for sure.
Any questions, board? All right, number 7, this is the recommendation that the board approve the parking, let's see, parking between and Old Farm Road meet the standard of I above, that the lot has unique site conditions such as a utility easement or unstable soils that allow for parking, but not a building to be located adjacent to the public street.
So I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but I should probably show a figure of what this is about.
Okay.
Yes, please.
We have two front yards
Right.
on this site, and one of them is on Old Farm Road, and this has to do with the little jug handle piece of the lot that goes out to Old Farm Road.
Right. Okay.
You're gonna do some arts and crafts.
I'm going to do some arts and crafts again. So, hey, I can use the same schema that I used before.
Oh, you engineers.
Look at this. This is Old Farm Road again.
Yeah.
And Tilley Drive again. The property has frontage on Old Farm Road. You can't have parking to the front except under all the various exceptions that the board is well aware of. Obviously, they also have frontage on Tilley Drive, and they do not have parking at the front. So staff is suggesting the board allow the exception that they have unsuitable conditions because they have a wetland, they have a 65-foot residential buffer, and that would only allow them to build a building that's about yay big. And that would kind of not be, oh, that's terrible color. Sorry about that.
Oh, you guessed our future plans. Just kidding.
Yeah, so if they were to have to meet the standard, they'd have to build a building that was about that big.
Yeah. I'm good with this. Is anyone not good with it?
Can we put a bank in there?
No, just an
No.
Drive-through, ATM.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your
And
patience.
when we get to see our updated site plan, we have provided additional landscaping in that area to screen parking from Farm Road.
Okay, number 8. The question is, can you define the area of the site amenity, the perimeter?
Yes, we submitted today, there's 2 plans on site amenity areas. If you can pull those up, that would be super.
Oops, hold on. Thought I had it up already. Apologies. The PowerPoint or the other?
No.
The PDF? Okay.
In the files that we provided.
Two.
Yeah.
Bookmarks, and there should be one called landscaping.
It's called site amenity areas.
Got it.
Thanks.
Super.
Thanks, Gail. Oh, gee.
We are providing 2 areas for site amenities for the site, and none of the definitions of your site amenities quite fit perfectly for what we're providing. But basically, we're providing the first area shown here falls under the definition as best we can for a courtyard space, and this is at the front entry that we saw in the perspective earlier,
Right.
with the entrance exit that comes out of the building right there. And part of the area is paved, which has a low seating wall as well as bistro chairs and tables for visitors and patients to use, as well as it's got the lawn area that's surrounded by landscaping. So this whole area is what we're calling our courtyard space. And again, this one is designed for patients and visitors to the outpatient surgery center. Under the definition of what we need to provide for a site amenity, we need a minimum of 5,040 square feet. This space is 6,800 square feet. So under that definition of the square footage, we meet it. Under the definition of a courtyard space, it does say that it should be surrounded by 3 sides of a building, We don't have three sides of the building. We have two sides of a building. We have a low stone wall, but this space is the public amenity that we're providing for both the patients and the visitors to the center. If you can go to the next one, we also have a site amenity that best fits under your definition of snippet parklet space. And this is on the north side of the building, and this is for employees, staff of the facility. This, you see that just to the upper part of the image here is where the existing, or the proposed parking area is, with a path connection to this snippet. But the employee entrance to the building is through this space, or bordering this space. So again, I believe the snippet parklet is a 600 square feet to 4,000 square feet. This is proposed at 1,200 square feet. Again, having tables and bistro chairs and spaces for employees to use for whatever. In addition, there is the northern part of the site that we've talked about that will also be part of a future path connection that we have shown kind of on our sketch, as a sketch on our plan for a future connection from whatever the north-south path connection is to the site.
Quick question.
Sure.
What is that rectangular feature immediately north of the lawn and west of the purple text saying proposed site amenity?
Oh, that is a handicap ramp. So due to the grade of coming from the parking area, there are a set of stairs that go directly through that path, and then there's the handicap accessible route around.
Okay.
That whole green banded area there, the lawn area that's showing there between the parking area to the north and the parking area bordering the building and the driveway here, is where the Green Mountain Power and Champlain Water District easements are, and we can't change the grades under there. We're very limited in terms of what we can do. So in order to make that handicap accessible and be able to get.
Okay, and one more quick question.
Sure.
Are there regulations around how close to the building people can smoke a cigarette?
50 feet.
Well, we're a non-smoking organization. We don't permit smoking on our property.
Okay. So that's why I see people like on Pearl Street smoking cigarettes there. So people are going to go to Tilley Drive then to.
Yeah, if people want to, they want to violate rules and, break regulations, that they do that. We have security and our staff will intervene. We're a non-smoking facility.
For the entire property, okay.
The entire property.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the staff comment number 9, I guess, is that, as Gail said, they don't quite meet the type for a courtyard. A courtyard needs to be surrounded by a building. But the suggestion was maybe this is not this one, but the other. This one's really cute. Maybe the other one gets to stay kind of how it is with a little bit of tweaking and become a pocket plaza. There may be a better type that still allows you to use the same space with a little bit of tweaking. So that's kind of what we're getting at here, is that
And it would still be a site amenity.
Yeah, I like what I see.
Amenity.
I like what it see. Let's label it what it needs to be labeled.
Yeah, and if it needs a little bit of tweaking in terms of like hardscape or seating or whatever to make it tick all the boxes for that type.
Yeah, we're agreeable to that.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Okay, I think so. We just
South-facing. Nice.
covered 10.
Employees can be in the shadows.
Let's move on to number 11, which is regarding the wetland impacts. I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board discuss whether they consider the impacts to be minimized. Staff considers the least impact would result in, I lost it here, in accessing the site from the east, and lower impacts if the western driveway is retained, could result from removing the landscaped area and directing both through traffic and drop-off traffic along the building. You've had a chance to read this. What are your thoughts?
As we presented at sketch plan, we really can't have the entrance to this building and the site access from the east to make this work. The way this building is designed is it's built into the hillside, so the main level that you access from the main driveway is a full level. The lower level is a partial level, and it's down lower, and it conforms to the site. We had submitted a sketch plan, a cross-section showing that. We didn't submit that now, but we can submit that again to show that. But if we had to flip this and put the entrance on the lower part of the site, again, the site slopes from the west to the east. There's at least a 30-foot drop. So it's a considerable drop. All the site drains to the east. That's why the stormwater wetlands are all on the eastern side of the site. To be able to have the access come in and have an entrance to this building on that lower level, we would have a very hard time making it ADA friendly and work for the site.
A great deal of care was given on how our patients arrive and depart and what the circulation is for our preoperative surgery and postoperative. If we were restricted to using the east side, this site would not be viable for this project.
I'll just add what the applicant's overviewed is what I recall from sketch, and that they had revisited and minimized impacts. So I don't have any concerns as is, but obviously hear from other board members.
Yeah, I think the concern is regarding the wetland impacts and how you can minimize the impacts.
Right, and what I think you may have information here you can present and review again, how we believe we accomplished that and we reviewed during sketch plan.
Yeah, so at sketch, the board talked about, working on the driveway to minimize the impacts. Could there be one driveway? Could you move the driveway over? So that's what we were really hoping you would talk about.
Okay, so originally the driveway was proposed, instead of curved as it's shown right now in front of the building, it was all the way over to the setback line.
Right.
And so there was considerably more wetlands impacts. It was over 5,000 square feet. And we went back and we looked at that. We have the main driveway that goes to the site, and then we have a separate driveway that is the drop-off area, that we really need those two separate in order for this facility to work as designed. So we have minimized those impacts. We have proposed a retaining wall. It's a 4-foot high retaining wall that goes along the edge of that driveway to minimize further impacts on the wetlands and the wetlands buffer. And there was some question about what the material of the retaining wall and the guardrail is. And again, we have provided that information to you that hopefully.
To make it more consistent with the agricultural.
Yes, the proposed wall would be a concrete block wall, but it's what the finish of that wall would be. We haven't quite got that defined, but we're proposing vine plantings that will eventually grow up on that. The proposed guardrail is a standard that the medical center uses on other campuses, so we provided an image of what's being used right now, currently in place up at the medical center campus in Burlington. So it's a kind of a brownish color metal guardrail and looks pretty nondescript.
It's the same railing that the state Vermont uses in their parks and their, I would say, their state forest access roads. I mean, there's a depiction that we submitted.
Okay.
We think it's, a traditional design. It's not, a farm, but we think farm type agricultural fence. Mm-hmm. But it does have the protective durability we need for traffic, and it does have I would say a quiet Vermont aesthetic to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You'd have to be the judge of that.
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. Thanks. So we've gotten through the.
So did the board have any comments on the wetland impacts?
No, I'd echo what Quinn had said. We worked through that at sketch, and I feel comfortable that they've done the best that they can to minimize those impacts.
You have your camera.
I'm sorry? No, oh, okay. Are we good? Are we good, Frank?
So that's an example of what the wall.
I'm looking at this wall. Is that kind of that waste block? What is that?
No, it's not waste block. It's a concrete. a segmented concrete retaining wall. So that's something similar to what we would be using for the site.
Is that what you currently have? Is that a picture of what the bridge that goes over to community? No. Okay.
No, ignore the bridge and the railing up there. Again, we were just trying to find an image of the wall to be able to show you.
But Dave, you said there was an image of the guardrail in here?
I think there should also
There should be an image of the guardrail.
Yeah, if you flip to the next, in that same
Yeah,
file.
Hang on a minute, there's way better looking architectural block than that on lots of walls around South Burlington.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I don't know, Marla, I thought when you wrote agricultural, I guess you meant agricultural. I thought you meant to say architectural. But that's my comment on the wall.
You would like improvements to that, Frank, it sounds like.
An improvement to the character, to the aesthetic character of the wall, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I think the wall looks fine as it is.
Okay. Well, so are we directing them to change it or to keep it? I think they need some feedback.
Dan doesn't have a problem with it. Frank thinks they can do better. What do other folks think?
So this is the industrial open space zoning district. So it's intended to have a mixture of sort of light industrial and commercial spaces and open spaces, and keep in mind sort of the setting. And that's where we were coming from using the word agricultural.
Right. Other folks? I don't have a real problem with it, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I don't have much concern either.
Okay. All right, so I guess we're not directing them to do anything differently. Okay, number 13. There's a question about redesigning the roadway provided in the right-of-way.
I think we already talked about this. I think this is the connection from Bourne Road, which is on the Eastview development, that would connect through that northern part of the site to the future official map road.
Okay.
On Lot 2.
Okay.
So we're working on that.
Thank you. Number 14 is a suggestion that we invoke technical review of the traffic impact analysis. Does that make sense? And would someone like to make a motion? I'll go ahead and move that the board invoke a technical review of the traffic impact assessment or analysis.
Second.
Any discussion about that? All in favor of invoking technical review, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, number 15. This is the connection to the north-south roadway on the official map. I think we've covered this.
So this is slightly different. And this is sort of what we were talking about with the last hearing, actually. This is just a different place in the regulations where it says the same thing. The reservation of land may be required on any lot for provision of access to abutting property owners, or to improve general access and circulation in the area. Can you pull up the map again? This is the best map we've ever had. We're using it all the time. So with the north-south roadway, what I had drawn in as pink, at the last hearing, we talked about whether there should be a connection from this project to that roadway. I guess I'll draw again. Yeah, I'm getting good at this. So pink roadway. And then whether there ought to be a connection from this project to the planned roadway. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to connect it. Oh, that was a bad location because that's where their chillers are. Maybe it goes here or something. Obviously, no reason to build it now because there's no roadway. That'd be silly. But should there be a plan showing how that could be done in the future? Should there be an easement? Should there be a surety to actually create the connection? What level of encumbrance is appropriate here?
And I apologize for not knowing, but could you give an overview of like a surety versus an easement and how those function differently in this situation?
Yeah, so an easement is typically from a property owner to the benefit of someone else. So I'm not sure that that really makes sense here, because who would the someone else be? A surety would be they would put money in the bank that could be used for construction of this connection at such time as the Pink Road were built. And that would probably be a bond, because bonds are relatively cheap, and it could be 10 years. And then I guess the third option would be, I guess it's not really a third option, it's a separate track, would be to show how that would be built, and either provide a surety or not provide a surety. But to show that it is a feasible thing for at such time as when the Pink Road does go in.
And again, the Pink is supposed to be a public road at some point,
Yep.
and it would most likely be built if the property on which it is located gets developed, and then
Or perhaps
that
before.
developer would be forced to build the road, and then the city would take it over.
It might be built before that point. I mean, that property is severely encumbered by wetlands, and with the O'Brien Eastview development, if that IC district really takes off, there may be, or exit 12B takes off, there may be need for connection of that Pink Road before anything happens on the parcel to the east.
Remind me where the Pink Road ends up? Kimball Ave? No.
Yep.
Oh, Kimball Ave, okay. But there, to the left of the Pink Road, there will also be, we hope, a recreation path.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll throw in my 2 cents that I'll probably be dead before exit 12B gets built. And then B, I would just say reserve the land, reserve the space there so that the connection can be made at some point. But I think it'll be at least 10 or 15 years before anything gets built on that Pink thing.
Maybe.
That's just me.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
We would prefer that this is a secure medical facility, loading dock, traffic. We wouldn't really believe that'd be a good location for that interconnection, which we believe we heard in the last testimony that you're required to have. We'd rather see that on the north end of the site, up towards the O'Brien property, and happy to work with granting any easement to get connectivity, probably in a more conducive area as opposed to there.
Okay.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. To me too.
And we can look.
It's kind of like the previous discussion.
Would point out
It
that
doesn't make a difference where that location is.
Right, yeah. And one
by
of
the time we're done with it, there's nothing we could ever build there to begin with. There's so many roads and paths.
No, I think that's a good point. And one of the other things that I wanted to bring up is that one of the reasons that might become important in the future is if 12B goes in, or if that Pink Road gets built without there being a 12B, traffic on Tilley Drive might be such that it's not such a great idea to have a driveway to a major medical center that close to the intersection. So it might be better to loop around the back. But yeah, I think what you're saying makes sense.
Okay. We can look at that. Thank you.
Okay, number 16, regarding the Department of Public Works update. Did we get it from them?
You know, I didn't. I got a note from Tom, and he said, "Oh, I thought I missed my window of opportunity. Are you saying I still have time to give comments?" And I said, "If you have any comments, please provide them by Tuesday," and I did not. So I'll poke him again just because it is a relatively major site. You know, we're going to continue.
Okay.
I'm not going to invite him to change the design, but if he has things like, you know, the fire hydrant should be 10 feet over or whatever, I think those are probably good
Okay.
to include.
Great.
And we'll be happy to address whatever his comments are.
Okay. Number 17, this is compliance with the South Burlington Water District, and they have there are 7 comments above.
Yes, those have already been addressed. We've submitted the revised sheets that reflect those changes. What happened was the plans that got submitted with a site plan application, the comments came in to our engineer after they had been submitted. So anyway, the plans have been updated. We've addressed all of them.
Okay. Let's take one more comment, and then I want us to do a time check and figure out where we go from here. Number 18 is, we need information about the enclosure and screening of the yard composters.
So if you could pull up the site plan, because there's a lot of things all back in this area. The yard compactors, actually, they were this comment had to do with the, yeah, I guess it's gonna be easier to see. We have a bunch
Yeah,
of.
site plan, I think would be
Yeah.
easier to.
Yeah, we have a bunch of mechanical, electrical, plumbing
Right.
equipment all out in the back area.
The
Some of it
oxygen
is-
farm and.
Yes,
yeah.
the oxygen farm, which does have an 8-foot-high chain link fence
Right.
around it. We have a generator that does have an 8-foot-high chain link fence around it with a gate. I think both of those do. The yard compactors are at the service entrance to the building.
Are they
and-
compactors or composters?
No, they're
Compactors.
compactors, one's for recycling and one's.
Oh,
for
okay, I
solid
misread that, I'm sorry.
Right. And those will be, right, they're between those two retaining walls. And the retaining wall on the west side, thank you, has a 8-foot-high screen, which we provided an image of what that would be proposed to be. And then the other side is a retaining wall. But these are.
So they're enclosed. big.
They're enclosed in that area as well. The chillers, we have, there's the 2 chillers that are out between the stormwater wetlands ponds. Those do not have anything surrounding them, but we have proposed landscaping evergreens along the east side of the site to screen them. And this whole area is considerably lower than where the residential properties are, which was a concern about screening from the residential properties. We did provide cross-sections to show from those properties, what they would see, and none of this area is gonna be visible from them at all.
Okay, questions from the board? Okay, it is 9:20, so I'd like us to take a pause and give you an opportunity to get anything from us that you feel you need to do before you come back the next time.
So what are the big outstanding staff
Yeah.
comments, in other words?
Yep.
And then we'll go to, and then we'll have some public comment. right?
Sure.
Yep.
And then we'll use additional available time if available.
Yeah.
I think one question we have has to do with, landscaping. I don't know if you can pull up the proposed, the updated illustrative plan. We can at least quickly talk about that.
Did you send that over today?
Yes. We've added additional landscaping addressing a series of comments that were in the staff report.
Too many maples.
We haven't revised that yet, but yes, we will revise. That's an easy one. So we did provide information to clarify that we believe we do meet a series of those requirements, one of them having to do with the islands and landscaping related to the square footage of parking area. So I believe we're in compliance with that requirement.
But I did want to point out one thing on that, when you're looking at the landscaping and the requirement, some of the comments about some of the screening. We wanted to maintain as much view for the neighbors to the east. That's in discussions with them. They thought that was valuable. We have the windmill and some other things. So we were strategically placing some of this landscaping to ensure that the views really weren't encumbered from the neighboring properties. And that maybe had some influence on the spacing and where the placement of the landscaping. But there's some calculations in there to get into great detail about what what those calculations are, and I think it demonstrates that we meet or exceed the standard, given that consideration of trying to, keep the views open for our neighbors. If you fill up that area behind with trees, they're not going to be able to see out to the east, and we were sensitive to that.
Yes, and see the windmill that we relocated. We did provide landscaping along the western portion of land that borders onto Old Farm Road. We provided additional landscaping along the eastern side of the property. We provided additional landscaping along the northern edge of the parking area, of that large northern parking area, as well as along the northern property line bordering with Eastview. And then there was a staff comment about landscaping in the front yard setback. We have really tried to keep the front yard setback, the front yard with some trees, but it's going to be planted with a meadow mix. We really wanted to kind of keep that agrarian feel to the site. So that's why we purposely did not plant anything there. And in addition, there's ledge outcroppings in that area. So that was our intent.
I think Gail makes a really interesting point about the front yard that we hadn't thought about, and I'd like to get the board's temperature on whether that makes sense, because the standard is, in the case of non-residential uses, the required front yard and or the frontage along designated collector streets shall be suitably landscaped and maintained in good appearance. Landscape elements shall promote stormwater runoff. Given Gail's point about the agricultural setting, does their proposal to, instead of doing a more formal landscaping, to do this agrarian landscaping?
Wildflowers, a meadow.
Does that sit well with you guys?
I like that idea, but
There are existing street trees all along Tilley Drive by the shared use path.
The standards of the district specifically say agricultural? Or is that something we're making up?
I believe it's in the purpose statement to reflect the agricultural character or something.
Of the district? What district is this again? Is the
IO,
what?
the industrial open space.
Okay. I just want to be sure, that's all. I just want to.
okay.
Okay, yeah, let me pull it up.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Frank, do you have any comments?
I do. Wildflowers are great, but they leave nothing but a desolate dead space in the wintertime.
That's true. That's true.
So I'm a tree guy for a development on this scale.
Yeah, I would just say thematically, I would offer that we've had quite a bit of discussions with the neighbors, and one of the important attributes that they felt valuable was to the extent possible, preserve the agricultural characteristics to the extent that we could, given the development there. So that kind of drove a lot of our design decisions around that. So.
Go ahead, Frank.
Everything on the far side of the trees can be agricultural.
So the IO district says established to provide suitable locations for high quality large lot uses with access to arterial routes in the airport. The IO district regulations and standards are intended to allow high quality planned developments that preserve the generally open character of the district, minimize impacts on natural resources, and enhance the visual quality of approaches to the city. So it doesn't actually use the word agricultural. It just talks about generally open character of the district.
Correct. Okay, thanks. I mean, I kind of hear Frank's point. I get the point about like not covering it with trees, but I don't know,
A balance.
some shrubs or some other things along the front.
Well, we do have shrubs and plantings all up at that courtyard space. And there
Yeah,
are,
I mean, I don't know what crosses the line. Like, when do you have enough? They're meeting the landscape budget, right?
Can we see the streetscape on here? I mean, there's substantial trees on Tilley Drive now. I'm not sure if they're shown here, though. No, they're not. If you were.
Yeah, you can kind of see them in the existing.
you do see them.
Yeah. The street trees are there, right?
I mean, and there's shrubs there.
The entire of that elevation has been like composed with shrubs and trees and freestanding wall, lighting.
Is there a rendering that you could maybe send in at some
I
point?
can do an elevation of it to show you, but if you look closely, we do have plantings all along the front of that elevation, and we work with the architect, and I think we're really bringing a beautiful building to that street.
Okay.
With some open lawn, I mean, lawn any.
But I would also say there's mature, I don't see them on here, maybe you can see them, but there's mature trees all the way the length of Tilley Drive
Sure.
in front of the building.
That's correct.
I can't,
Yep.
oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
there they go, yeah.
Right, they do.
Yeah.
The other thing is the building, as it faces south, is designed to provide as much natural sunlight into the spaces, which is pretty critical for the patient-centric criteria for this project. So we would prefer not to fill it all up with trees and have that shaded. We do have
Yeah.
some up there, but
Yeah. And to me, the open space characteristics are being captured by the northern and eastern side of the parcel. So.
Yeah, the business about blocking sunlight is solved by having relatively short street trees, that's all. I don't think that has a lot of weight.
well, there are street trees currently existing all along Tilley Drive. They're mature, they're very nice.
I mean, and to be sure, we're putting 170 very big trees onto this site.
And Marla, again, the standard for landscaping in front, what does the standard language say?
So this is, in the case of non-residential uses, the required front yard I'm paraphrasing, shall be suitably landscaped and maintained in good condition, good appearance.
That's pretty
So the
straightforward.
board in the past, this is actually before my time, but I understood that the board has leaned pretty heavily on this standard on things like Shelburne and Williston Road. And so this is
Yeah,
Units.
yeah, with the courtyard and the plantings near the building, and looks okay to me. I mean, that standard is pretty broad, so it's not
Okay,
requiring shrubbery.
do we need to discuss this any further, or?
We'd love some feedback and guidance as to if this is acceptable or if we need to do something different.
I personally don't have a problem as it's presented. And I do know that wildflowers, meadows do die back in the winter, but with all the other trees and shrubs around, I think there's enough vegetation for my taste. Other folks?
I was waiting to see if Frank was going to say anything. That is my mind as of right now as well, but I think just to echo, I think it would be helpful when you guys came back to put forward that elevation so the board can see how that visually looks. I think that would help us.
We can do that.
Absolutely.
Excellent, thanks.
Thanks, Quinn, good point.
Any other comments?
I just have one quick question. As I'm looking at this and we were talking about the path along the eastern side potentially coming in here to make that pedestrian connection, you know, I see a row of trees kind of where that path would go. And so would the intent be to relocate some of those to provide the screening, or how would we kind of weigh that path versus
Well, that's a good question. And that's
trees?
why
That's the piece that we need to evaluate. We haven't
yes.
started that. Well, we started, but we haven't gotten into it in detail, but there will be needing to be coordination there to weave that path down, provide for the necessary screening, and we will do that.
Yep.
Frank, any final comments before we move on?
I would like to see the elevations too. Really, it depends. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. The elevations, I think, are important
Okay.
before we make a final judgment on this point.
Okay, we'll look forward to those. Thanks for your input.
Okay.
Okay, I think given the time, unless you have anything burning that you need us to address.
I think the only burning thing, and I don't know if it's really burning, is any feedback you have on the mechanical, electrical equipment screening that we've proposed.
Yeah, I apologize if I missed this, but I didn't see a lot of information about how some of these things were going to be screened. Like I didn't see a detail on what the fence was.
Sure, we provided a detail for the fence, but we can provide that.
Okay.
Again, as I said, the chillers, we're using landscaping. A couple of these things provide
Yeah, so
elements.
I
We're
think some more-
providing evergreens for screening. For the compactors, we have the metal screen, which we did provide information on that today.
So yeah, like how tall are these features versus the plants or fences that kind of information, I think, is probably necessary because some of these things are pretty big.
Yeah.
We had provided, again, if in sketch plan, and I did submit it again today, the
Okay.
sizes of
Okay.
these equipment.
So we'll incorporate that into the next set of staff comments. I didn't want to go back to sketch because I wasn't sure that it was the same still, so I didn't use that same material again. And then I guess this really didn't make it into the staff report, but do these things make noise?
The chillers, they'll make some noise, similar noise that you find in other commercial buildings in South Burlington. The emergency generator would be the loudest component. Typically, that would run once a week for an hour for testing, and then we usually would have that so it's not the first thing in the morning per se. And then there would be, only in the event of a major power outage, which we don't anticipate, they would run, like our last ice storm we had
Right.
a decade or so ago. The rest of the equipment is, commercially used and, everywhere's in the city of South Burlington, so it's nothing unusual.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we're going to turn to public comment now. There's no one in the audience. I know there's someone virtually. How
I
many?
have a couple of people virtually. I know Donna.
Yeah,
would like
I've been
to-
asking if I could make a public comment via the chat, and I
Yes.
haven't been able to get the attention.
Right. So we, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, the chat is not part of the public record, so we don't use the chat function during DRB meetings.
I know, I was just trying to use it to say that I had a comment.
And I know you couldn't get your camera to work. So, and I do see, is it Brian Armstrong?
Yeah, Brian
okay.
does have his
Okay.
hand up.
So it's just the two of you. Why don't we start with Donna, and please tell us what's on your mind about this project.
Yeah, so this particular site, not the project per se, has come to the Bike and Ped Committee's attention regarding the O'Brien property. And we know that there was a resolution between the city and the O'Brien property about creating this link to Tilley Drive, so much further east from the Old Farm Road. And I just, in looking at the site plan, I thought, well, it is a surgical center. There will be people bicycling to work, potentially a good number of them. So why not create a connection from the south end of that O'Brien shared use path directly to the northeastern corner of the parking lot on this property, so that it wouldn't be all that much paving, and it would be a real convenience, because if you connect to a future road on the east side of the property, you're actually forcing people to go down quite a lot of hill just to get to Tilley Drive, to have to go right back up a pretty steep hill. And we know that hills do tend to discourage people on bikes. And that having a little bit easier way to get, through the, even along the driveways, you don't necessarily have to provide an extra shared use path, but even through the driveways will allow people to much more easily get to the food service business that's on the corner of Tilley Drive and Heinsberg Road, which we anticipated would be a pretty popular place for people from the O'Brien property to go to, both walking and using their bicycles. And so that's why we thought that, having to go somewhat further down Tilley Drive to have to go up a steep hill isn't ideal. I mean, in the future, it would be fine because it would provide access to all of the businesses further east on Tilley Drive, as well as over to across the bike pedestrian bridge to other industrial sites. So that's just a consideration, not hard to do, but a consideration for employees of the UVM Surgical Center, as well as potentially some patients as well. I don't know if you're going to have, well, and as well as just making it a lot easier for employees to walk and, pleasant places to walk to, because the O'Brien development is going to be quite pleasant. The whole walkway over toward Kimball Avenue, I've seen earlier designs, and I think that's going to be quite nice. So a more direct connection to that shared use path would be very beneficial to the project, I think. And it would be great for us to have a little bit closer look at the Bike Ped Committee meeting of the project later on.
Okay. Are you suggesting that the applicant reach out to you?
Well, it would be great if they did, but if not, they could certainly just, add that connection to the northeast corner of their parking lot. And I think that would satisfy our needs quite well.
Marla, did you want to offer anything?
If the scheduling works out, the applicant can certainly meet with the Bike Ped Committee. I wouldn't want to slow this project down. I know the Bike Ped Committee only meets once a month. And I think that, the purpose of having a committee liaison attend the DRB meetings is to represent the position of the committee. So, the board, it's ultimately the board's decision what to do with feedback from various committees. And so I think Donna's feedback is that the suggestion is to create a connection directly to the parking lot rather than requiring someone who lives in Eastview and works at the surgery center to go all the way around. And let's take a look at that at the next meeting. Hopefully, if it's a sidewalk, that's not a huge add to the project, but let's take that comment seriously and have the board revise some feedback at the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, a 10-foot shared use path would be what would be preferred.
Didn't we just spend 20 minutes talking about that hypothetical layout of where the path would go?
Right. So Donna's suggestion is that instead of having that path go all the way to Tilley, it should in fact connect to the project itself. So just being sensitive of time.
We will look at that.
You mean a spur to get your bike into the parking lot?
I think so. Yeah. So
Okay, all right. I'm sure they can figure that out in the interest of time.
We've gotten this
Let's
good
not belabor
information.
this.
okay.
And we have a
Keep in mind,
road, rights of way and paths to figure out, and we'll come back and
Great.
Yeah.
tell you
Thank
what our
you.
ideas are.
Exactly.
The
Thank
committee's
you.
not the board. And keep in mind, you haven't heard the feedback of the board on that, and so they may say, "No big deal, you don't need to do it," but just we'll talk about
We'll
it.
take a little bold
Yeah.
creativity there and see what we can
Okay,
come up
great.
with.
Thank you. And thank you, Donna. Okay.
Brian Armstrong has some.
Brian,
public
sure. Go ahead, Brian. State
First,
your
thank you
name.
very
State
much
your name.
Brian Armstrong, I'm a resident of Old Farm Road. You guys know me well from the O'Brien project. And first and foremost, I want to applaud the UVM Medical Center for how they've approached this with their neighbors, how they've approached this with the town. So as far as what could be developed there, I know that I'm not the only one on Old Farm Road that appreciates their approach, including how they laid out the path to the easterly side, working with us on the landscaping. So on the record, I support this entirely with the lot or the path being located at the easterlymost section. I appreciate the Bike Paths Committee's perspective. I think if they actually count the number of buildings and number of offices, the path being located to the most easterly side actually serves more workers, more pedestrians to get to the majority of the offices on Tilley Drive, as opposed to having them, button hook east towards the lake and then have to go back down Tilley Drive to those offices. I would further argue if you add the people that work at Technology Park, the path located on the easterlymost side serves the majority of the people's interest. I would also like to politely challenge and ask the board if there seems to be a harmonious effort being happening between O'Brien's, UVM, Doug Dickey, Barbara Neff, Brian Armstrong to find this fit that works for everyone, delivers housing units, delivers medical office needs that happening. why would they want to potentially reopen the location of the path that's going to get more neighbors involved, potentially cause more delays, debate, so forth and so on. So I think we've got a great proposal to have the lot located on the most easterly portion. I'll also politely remind everybody, when this development at O'Brien's finished, there's going to be more access to Williston Road. There's going to be commercial. I believe there's going to be some eateries, coffee shops, stuff like that. And the Red Barn Deli is only open Monday through Friday, I think from 8 to 6:30. So the pedestrians that we're talking about are probably going to be at work, are probably going to be at school. Some of them will work on Tilley Drive. Yes. But again, I think this is a make sense project as it's stated by the applicant with the path to the easterly side. And I applaud them how hard they've worked on wetlands, on screening short-terms and long-terms views for the neighbors, and to make it a win-win-win. So thank you to UVM and for the board for listening to my comments and considering my perspective.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, thanks, Betsy. So I think it's time to entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
Do we have a date certain?
September 20th. Sorry, it's because the recess.
I move to continue the hearing to September 20th.
I'll second.
Does that work for you guys getting all your other stuff done? It's like a month.
That's plenty of time.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'd need stuff 2 weeks before that hearing.
Still plenty of time.
Great.
Any discussion about the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will see you back here on September 20th. And thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, one more agenda item, the minutes of
July 19th. So I got a note from Frank saying that he had some significant edits to those minutes that were more significant than could be handled on the fly.
Okay.
So
Now, actually, I've kind of cut them down. I think we can do it.
Okay. Betsy, you want to pull them up, please? Actually, Betsy, you want to go crazy and pull up the Word doc? I know.
My computer is not
The Word document?
the actual.
so you can make edits on the fly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marla, it's not.
Let's live dangerously.
There we go. It didn't want to come up.
So I was not at the July 19th meeting. Is it okay if I skedaddle and abstain? Or do I have to be here to abstain?
You can still vote if you weren't there, can't you?
You can, but she's asking if she can skedaddle.
I think you can skedaddle.
Okay. Thank you.
Get out of here.
Closest to phosphorus.
I did not look at them since I was
Okay.
All right, hang tight, Frank. Hang tight, guys. I'm about to pull him up here.
Okay.
All right. I tried my best to get it converted to Word, but I couldn't.
No, it's fine. If I had gotten your note earlier, I would have just sent it to you. Okay, so here we have the minutes in Word format.
First page, third paragraph from the bottom. This is, Ms. Filbert noted that currently the applicant is in violation of the zoning ordinance. Insert the words "on jurisdictional grounds," comma.
After zoning, oh, sorry. After zoning ordinance?
After the period.
Oh.
Start the sentence with "on jurisdictional grounds," comma.
I'll fix the typos later.
Okay, small t, the board.
What did he say?
As what? The board?
Lowercase t, lowercase the.
Oh.
Erase the other the, right.
Oh, I see. Okay, I've got it. The board.
Board had revoked.
Approval.
The administrator's approval. That's kind of important.
This is helpful, Frank.
We were not.
Administrative officer's approval? That probably
That's
makes
fine.
sense.
All right. And then in the last line, are to remove it or apply to the board to add it.
Or apply.
apply to the board too. That's it. Then on page 3.
How do I get rid of this? It's driving me crazy. There we go.
Go ahead.
Should this be a paragraph?
And there's a couple of weirdnesses here. The top of that page, I just picked this up in passing, not the main one. Third line down from the top, Mr. Gill said the one exception is the barn, what?
Mr.
I don't
Gill
see where you are.
said the one exception.
Mr. Gill said the one exception is the barn and one trail
Oh,
near the barn.
the barn area, it should say.
Oh, the barn area, right, okay. And then continuing in that line, and then it's, instead of there will be an agreement with the city, I'd say Mr. Langfeld said they are working on an agreement with the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now go to the beginning of that sentence. Okay.
You see that?
Yeah, she's got it.
Stated that, and
they are working.
They are working on.
They are working on an agreement with the city. Okay.
And then in the next, slide over the open, it's singular, open spaces, opens. See that? Strike the S. That's it.
Space.
And then down.
Open space singular.
No, open spaces.
He had opens. It said it was opens spaces, so I took that S off.
Yeah. Okay. And then next to the last paragraph from the bottom, there's a couple changes. I would say this, and hear me out before maybe you don't want to make the change. I would say in the third sentence, middle of the third line, the portion of the path the applicant now proposes to build has been redesigned.
So in this area, you would start it different? Is that what you're saying?
I would say the portion of the path the applicant now proposes to build has been redesigned.
Got that, the portion of the path.
Do you want me to actually type it?
Yeah.
So you guys can see it? Okay, so the portion of the path.
The applicant now proposes to build.
Do I leave this?
Yeah. The applicant now proposes to build.
Has now proposed
to build.
To build. Period.
Has been.
Has now been redesigned. I gotcha.
You don't need a second. You don't need a second now. Has been redesigned.
Has been redesigned.
You only need one now in the sentence. Right?
Okay.
English lesson.
All right. And, that ought to be enough. Now, I would say the next sentence it's unfortunate where it's placed. I don't know if you want to do anything about it. Then Sue goes on to talk about the sidewalk, but then comes back to the path in the next paragraph. It's not wrong. It's just odd.
Out of sequence.
Yeah, I've caught that sort of thing too, and then I go back to the tape and I'm like, that is the order it was discussed in. So Sue's minutes are an accurate representation of the order in which things were said, even if they don't make sense.
And I wouldn't want to have Sue's job, so we should be grateful.
Yes.
And then there's a couple other typos, but those are the things I was concerned about.
Where are the typos?
You want the other typos I picked up, or want to let them slide?
Well, we have it open. Why don't we just do it quick? Where are they?
All right, page 4, first full paragraph, third line from the bottom. The wetlands, page 4, regarding, the wetlands are gravel.
Yep. Okay.
And then second paragraph from the bottom, Mr. Gill that addressed the traffic planning. He stressed that there have been either there has been no reduction or there have been no reductions, but you got to make them agree. There you go. And And then last, page 5, last paragraph. Is that page 5?
Well, they've moved around now that we've added some text, so it might be the start of page 6.
Okay. After Mr. Kochman questioned whether it is acceptable.
Okay.
And then page 6. You're missing his first full paragraph, 5th line.
Okay, things got moved around, so
It's the paragraph that begins with the applicant.
Mr. Gill said it may be harder. You see that 1, 2, 3, end of the 4th line. Mr. Gill said it may be harder for Public Works to plow, but it is what they were asked to do.
got it.
Okay, good.
That's all I have. Thank you for your
Careful
help.
reading, Frank. Thank you very much.
I oppose these changes.
When you have a little surgery, you sit around a lot.
Although, no, just.
Always good to have a grammarian and a lawyer looking at these, so thank you.
Fails. Motion to amend the minute fails.
Any other comments about, Dan's making noise down at the end. He's not behaving.
No, I'll let it slide because you need my vote to approve the minutes. So.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
We do. We got 4, I think, right? We got 4 out of 7. We're good.
Do we have a motion to approve the
I'll make a
minutes?
motion to approve
Thank
the
you.
minutes as
Second.
revised.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the motions, say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. We are done for the evening. Thank you, everyone. We will see you back here in September.
Oh,
Thank you
September.
very
Have a
much.
good break.
What do I gotta do with my Tuesday nights now?